At 2:38 in the morning, a father sat alone in his Harlem apartment staring at a loaded revolver because the police had just told him his 18-year-old daughter was probably a prostitute and her case was already closed. But what happened next triggered 3 days of blood in New York City, and the police didn't stop it. This is the story they never wanted told. June 4th, 1946, 2:38 a.m. 2:38, Marcus Williams' apartment, 135th Street, Harlem. Marcus Williams sat at his kitchen table staring at the gun like it might explain something to him if he looked long enough. A .38 revolver, loaded, cold, heavy in his hands. The gun had cost him $47 at a Bronx pawn shop. Money he didn't have, money he scraped together because tonight he'd made a decision. His daughter Ruby was dead, 18 years old, murdered, her body dumped in a railroad yard like trash. The police had made him identify her at the morgue, pulled back the sheet, exposed her face, then asked if she'd been involved in prostitution. His Ruby, who wanted to be a teacher, who never missed a day of school, who read books every night before bed, and the cop was asking if she was a prostitute. The police report said, colored female, approximately 18 years old. Evidence suggests prostitution-related incident, no suspects, low priority, no investigation, no justice, just a file closed before it ever opened. So Marcus bought a gun. He was going to find the men who killed Ruby, and kill as many as he could before they killed him. At least he'd die trying. Behind him from the bedroom, his wife Evelyn was crying. Had been crying for 5 hours straight, hadn't stopped since they brought her home from the morgue. Mark. Her voice was so quiet he almost didn't hear it. He turned. She stood in the doorway, her face destroyed by grief, hands shaking. "Call him," she whispered. Marcus shook his head. "No. Evelyn. I'm not calling Bumpy Johnson. I haven't spoken to him in 10 years. He's a gangster, a criminal. I'm not—" "The police don't care," Evelyn said. Her voice cracked. "The courts don't care. Nobody in this whole goddamn city cares that our Ruby is dead." She collapsed against the doorframe, sobbing. Marcus stood, went to her, held her while she shook. "I won't let them get away with it," Marcus said. "I'll find them. You'll die," Evelyn whispered against his chest. "You'll take that gun and you'll die. And then I'll have lost both of you. And Ruby's killers will still be walking free." Marcus's voice cracked. "Then what am I supposed to do?" Evelyn pulled back, looked him in the eyes. "Call him. Call Bumpy. He's the only person in this city with the power to make this right. The only one who will actually do something." Marcus stared at her, then at the gun, then back at Evelyn. He walked to the phone, hands shaking. Dialed a number he'd sworn 10 years ago he'd never call again. A number he'd memorized anyway, just in case, because deep down, Marcus Williams had always known. Someday something terrible would happen that the law couldn't fix. And when that day came, there would be only one man in Harlem powerful enough to deliver real justice. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered, deep, calm, immediately recognizing who was calling. "Mark." Marcus's voice shattered. "Bump, they killed my Ruby." Silence. 5 seconds that felt like forever. Then Bumpy Johnson's voice, quiet, cold as a January grave. "I'm coming." The line went dead. Marcus put the phone down, walked back to the table, unloaded the revolver, put the bullets in his pocket, put the gun back in its box, because he understood now he wasn't going to need it. Bumpy Johnson was coming, and the men who murdered Ruby Williams had maybe 3 days left to live. At 2:38 a.m., June 4th, 1946, 2:38, Marcus Williams' apartment, 135th Street, Harlem. Marcus Williams sat at his kitchen table staring at a loaded .38 revolver. The gun had cost him $47 at a Bronx pawn shop. Money he didn't have. Money he scraped together because tonight he'd made a decision. His daughter Ruby was dead, 18 years old, murdered. Her body dumped in a railroad yard like trash. The police had made him identify her corpse at the morgue, then asked if she'd been involved in prostitution. His Ruby, who wanted to be a teacher, who'd never missed a day of school, who read books every night before bed. And the cop was asking if she was a prostitute. The police report said, colored female, approximately 18 years old. Evidence suggests prostitution-related incident, no suspects, Low priority, no investigation, no justice, just a file closed before it even opened. So Marcus bought a gun. He was going to find the men who killed Ruby, and kill as many as he could before they killed him. At least he'd die trying. Behind him, from the bedroom, his wife, Evelyn, was crying. Had been crying for 5 hours straight. Hadn't stopped since they brought her home from the morgue. Mark. Her voice was so quiet he almost didn't hear it. He turned. She stood in the doorway, her face destroyed by grief, hands shaking. "Call him," she whispered. Marcus shook his head. "No, Evelyn, I'm not calling Bumpy Johnson. I haven't spoken to him in 10 years. He's a gangster, a criminal. I'm not—" "The police don't care," Evelyn said, her voice breaking. "The courts don't care. Nobody in this whole goddamn city cares that our Ruby is dead." She collapsed against the doorframe, sobbing. Marcus rushed over, held her while she shook. "I won't let them get away with it," Marcus whispered. "I'll find them. You'll die," Evelyn whispered into his chest. "You'll take that gun and you'll die. And then I'll have lost both of you, and Ruby's killers will still be walking free." Marcus's voice cracked. "Then what am I supposed to do?" Evelyn pulled back, looked him in the eyes. "Call him. Call Bumpy. He's the only person in this city with the power to make this right. The only one who will actually do something." Marcus stared at her, then at the gun, then back at Evelyn. Finally, he walked to the phone, dialed a number he'd sworn 10 years ago he'd never call again, but had memorized anyway, just in case. Because deep down, Marcus Williams had always known that someday something terrible would happen that the law couldn't fix. And when that day came, there was only one man in Harlem powerful enough to deliver real justice. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a deep, calm voice answered, "Mark." Marcus's voice shattered. "Bump. They killed my Ruby." Silence. 5 seconds that felt like forever. Then Bumpy Johnson's voice, quiet and cold as a January grave. "I'm coming." The line went dead. Marcus put the phone down, walked back to the table, unloaded the revolver, put the bullets in his pocket, put the gun back in its box. Because he understood now. He wasn't going to need it. Bumpy Johnson was coming. And the men who murdered Ruby Williams had maybe 3 days left to live. Before we understand what happened next, before we understand why the Harlem River ran red for 3 days, we need to understand who Ruby Williams was. Because Ruby wasn't just another victim. She wasn't just a name in a police report. Ruby Williams was 18 years old, a recent graduate of Wadley High School on 114th Street, top 10 in her class, National Honor Society. She'd been accepted to Howard University in Washington, D.C., with a full scholarship to study education, tuition, room, board, everything Marcus and Evelyn could never afford. Ruby wanted to be a teacher, not just any teacher. She wanted to teach young kids in Harlem, wanted to give back to her community the same way her teachers had invested in her. She was the pride of her family, Marcus and Evelyn's only daughter. Her younger brother James, just 12 years old, looked at her like she was a superhero. Ruby worked part-time at the Harlem Library on 135th Street, shelving books, helping patrons. The librarians loved her, said she was responsible, punctual, kind to everyone. She wore simple dresses her mother sewed, carried books everywhere, sang in the choir at Abyssinian Baptist Church every Sunday morning. She was beautiful, not in a way that invited trouble, but in the way that comes from youth, intelligence, and genuine hope for the future. Marcus worked for the United States Postal Service for 22 years, never missed a day, steady wages. Evelyn cleaned houses for wealthy white families downtown, 6 days a week. They were respectable people, law-abiding people, the kind of family Harlem aspired to be, hard-working, educated, striving for something better. They raised Ruby to believe in the system, to trust that if you worked hard, followed the rules, got an education, you could build a good life in America. And then, on June 3rd, 1946, the system showed them exactly how much it valued colored lives. Ruby Williams was murdered, and the police called her a prostitute and closed the case. But before we get to Ruby, before we understand what Bumpy Johnson did in those 3 days, we need to understand the men who killed her, because this wasn't random. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was calculated, systematic, evil. 8 months earlier, October 1945, East Harlem, Near 116th Street, a 16-year-old colored girl named Dorothy Jenkins was walking home from her job at a laundry when she disappeared. Her body was found 3 days later in an abandoned building near the East River, beaten, silenced forever. The police investigation lasted approximately 2 hours. They labeled her a troubled woman involved in street work, closed the file. No investigation, no interviews, no justice. Dorothy's family, poor, powerless, terrified, couldn't demand better, couldn't afford a lawyer, couldn't make the system care. So her murder went unpunished. And 5 men celebrated in a bar on 116th Street. They'd gotten away with it. The crew was led by Tony Russo, 26 years old, an enforcer for the Genovese crime family's East Harlem operations. Tony and his 4 men, Paulie Scarlotti, Jimmy DiNardo, Vinnie Carbone, and Frank Russo, Tony's younger brother, were street-level thugs. They collected gambling debts, did dirty work, kept Italian mob operations profitable. But Tony's crew had a side business, a secret. They hunted young colored girls. It started with Dorothy Jenkins. Tony had seen her walking alone and got an idea. Proposed it to his crew over drinks. What if we grabbed her? Did whatever we wanted? Think anyone would care? The others laughed nervously at first, but Tony was serious. Think about it. She's nobody. If she disappears, cops won't investigate. Her family can't do anything. We could grab her, have some fun, dump the body, and nobody would ever know. Paulie asked the obvious question, what if the cops do investigate? Tony's answer was simple. Then we say she was working the streets. Say we paid her. She tried to rob us. Things got rough. Even if they arrest us, what jury is going to convict 5 white men over a dead colored girl? We'll walk, guaranteed. The logic was ugly, but in 1945 New York, it was probably right. So they grabbed Dorothy, dragged her to an abandoned warehouse, spent hours tormenting her, then ended her life, dumped her body, and waited. Nothing happened. Police wrote streetwalker, closed the case. Tony's crew learned something dangerous. You could do this, and get away with it. For 8 months they stayed quiet, watching, waiting to see if anyone came for revenge. Nobody did. By May 1946, they got bold again. Just one more, Tony said, to prove we really can get away with it. And that's when they noticed Ruby Williams. Every Sunday after church, Ruby walked from Abyssinian Baptist on 138th Street to the Harlem Library on 135th to return books and check out new ones. Same route, same time, 3 o'clock. Someone had been watching. Sunday, June 3rd, 1946, 3:17 p.m. Ruby Williams walked down Lenox Avenue carrying 3 library books and her Bible, wearing a yellow summer dress her mother had sewn, white shoes, hair pinned neatly back. She never saw the car pull up beside her. The grab happened fast. 2 men jumped out. Paulie and Jimmy grabbed her arms, pulled her toward the car while she screamed. Vinnie Carbone pressed a chloroform-soaked rag over her mouth. In 15 seconds, Ruby Williams was unconscious, thrown into the back seat, and the car drove east toward the Bronx, disappearing into traffic. There were witnesses, maybe a dozen people saw it, but this was 1946 Harlem. People knew better than to report crimes involving white men grabbing colored girls. Police wouldn't help, might blame the victim, might arrest the witnesses, so people looked away, went home, tried to forget what they'd seen. Nobody called the police, nobody stopped the car, nobody saved Ruby Williams. The black sedan drove to the South Bronx, to an abandoned warehouse on Westchester Avenue. Tony's crew used to store stolen goods, isolated, soundproof, perfect. By 3:45 p.m., Ruby Williams was chained to a support beam, slowly regaining consciousness. When she opened her eyes and saw 5 white men staring at her, she started screaming. What happened next is something this video won't describe in detail, not because it isn't relevant, not because it doesn't matter, but because some things are too evil to put into words. What you need to know is this: Ruby fought. She fought with everything she had, scratched, kicked, begged, pleaded. But 5 men against 1 chained girl meant the outcome was never in question. And when she finally stopped moving, they wrapped her body in canvas, drove to a railroad yard on Park Avenue in East Harlem, dumped her behind a trash heap, like garbage, like she was nothing. Then they went back to Carlos Bar on 116th Street, drank, laughed, celebrated, At 8:47 p.m., a railroad worker found Ruby's body, called the police. Two officers arrived at 9:15 p.m., looked at her for maybe 90 seconds. One pulled out his notepad. The railroad worker asked, "Aren't you going to investigate? Look for evidence?" The cop stared at him like he was stupid. "Investigate what? She's a colored girl, probably a prostitute, probably got rough with a client. We'll file the report. Coroner will pick up the body." By Tuesday morning, the official report read, "Negro female, approximately 18 years old. Evidence suggests prostitution-related incident. No suspects. Low priority. Case closed." And that would have been the end. Ruby Williams would have been another statistic, another murdered girl the system didn't care about. But at 2:38 a.m., Marcus Williams made a phone call, and everything changed. Bumpy Johnson arrived at Marcus's apartment at 3:17 a.m., alone, no bodyguards, no entourage, just Bumpy, wearing a black suit, face unreadable. He knocked once. Marcus opened immediately. They stared at each other for a moment. Childhood friends who grew into different men. Marcus, postal worker. Bumpy, gangster. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Bump. Mark. They embraced briefly. Then Bumpy stepped inside. Evelyn sat on the couch, face swollen from crying. When she saw him, she stood. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. Bumpy nodded. "Tell me what happened." For 20 minutes, Marcus and Evelyn told him everything. How Ruby left church, never came home. How police knocked at 9:30 p.m. How at the morgue, standing over their daughter's broken body, cops asked if she was a prostitute. Evelyn broke down when she described what Ruby looked like, what they'd done to her. Bumpy listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react. But Marcus, who'd known him since they were 8, saw something in Bumpy's eyes. Rage, cold, controlled, absolute. When they finished, Bumpy was silent, then asked quietly, "Do the police know who did it?" "They're not even looking," Marcus said bitterly. "Called her a prostitute. Closed the case. So no investigation. Nothing." Bumpy walked to the window, looked out at Harlem's dark streets. "I need to know something, Mark. Are you prepared for what happens next?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Yes." "You sure? Because what I'm going to do, it's not legal. It's not going to bring Ruby back." "I don't care about legal," Marcus said. "The law didn't protect Ruby. The law doesn't care she's dead. I want those men to pay." Bumpy turned back. "Then here's my promise. I will find every single person involved in Ruby's murder. I will make them understand what they did. I will make them suffer. And when I'm done, everyone in this city will know what happens when you touch Harlem's children." "How long?" Evelyn whispered. 3 days, maybe 4. "And the men who killed her, final. They'll be in the Harlem River." Marcus closed his eyes, nodded. Evelyn walked over, took Bumpy's hand. "Make them suffer," she whispered. "Make them understand what they took from us." "I promise," Bumpy said. "Every single one." Then he left. By 4 a.m., he was making phone calls. By dawn, he'd have 5 names, 5 addresses, and a plan that would turn the Harlem River red. Tuesday morning, June 4th, 8 miles a.m., Bumpy sat in his office above Small's Paradise Jazz Club with Theodore "Teddy" Green, his lawyer and closest advisor. "I need to reach Frank Costello," Bumpy said. Teddy raised an eyebrow. Costello was acting boss of the Genovese crime family. Meeting him meant dealing with the most powerful mobster in New York. "What's the play?" "Ruby was grabbed in East Harlem. That's Italian territory. Whoever did this operates under the Genovese umbrella. I need to know if Costello's going to protect them, or step aside. And if he protects them, then we go to war." By Wednesday morning, Bumpy walked into a social club in Little Italy, past 2 bodyguards, entered a back office where Frank Costello sat reading the New York Times. "Mr. Johnson," Costello said calmly. "Teddy said this was urgent." "Sunday afternoon," Bumpy said. 5 men grabbed an 18-year-old colored girl off Lenox Avenue, took her to a warehouse, violated her, beat her to death, dumped her body. Police called her a prostitute and closed the case. Costello didn't flinch. "Why are you telling me?" "Because the grab happened in East Harlem, your territory, and I think your people have done this before." Costello picked up the phone. "Get me Angelo." 10 minutes later he hung up, looked at Bumpy. "Tony Russo's crew. 5 men. Bottom level, not made. Bumpy nodded. I'm going to kill every one of them. That could start a war. Then it starts a war. Costello stood. These men are liabilities, but I can't be seen ordering hits on my own people. He turned back. So here's the deal. Tony Russo and his crew are no longer under my protection. If something happens to them, I don't ask questions. Bumpy stood. I appreciate that. One more thing, Costello said. Your friend's daughter. I'm genuinely sorry. Kids are off limits. These 5 crossed a line. Bumpy walked out with 5 names, 5 addresses, and the Mafia's blessing. Wednesday evening, Bumpy sat with his 4 most trusted men, Willie Lee, Marcus Cole, James Quick Jackson, Teddy Green. 5 photographs on the table. These are the men who killed Ruby Williams, Bumpy said quietly. We have 3 days. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We take them one at a time. Make them understand what they did. Make them suffer. Then dump every body in the Harlem River. Same spot? Quick asked. No, different bridges. Let the current carry them. Bumpy pulled out waterproof paper and wrote, Ruby Williams, 18 years old. She wanted to be a teacher. You murdered her. June 3rd. This is justice. Harlem remembers. Everybody gets one of these pinned to them. Police are going to find the first body and no more are coming. And they won't stop it, Bumpy said. They know they failed Ruby. They know investigating means admitting they closed her case. They'll look the other way. Thursday morning. The hunt began. Thursday, June 6th, 11:30 p.m. Tony Russo left Carlos Bar drunk and laughing, walked east on 116th Street toward his apartment. 5 days since they grabbed the girl. No police, no consequences. They'd gotten away with it. He didn't notice the car trailing him. At 115th Street, he turned south. That's when Willie Lee stepped out of a doorway. Tony Russo. Tony stopped. Who the hell are you? Willie pulled a .45, fired once. Shot hit Tony's kneecap. Shattered it. Tony screamed, collapsed, blood pouring between his fingers. Marcus Cole pulled up. Willie dragged Tony into the back seat while he screamed. They drove him to the South Bronx. Same warehouse, same beam, same floor Ruby had died on. By midnight, Tony Russo sat tied to the support beam, knee destroyed, blood pooling beneath him, screaming. Then the warehouse door opened. Bumpy Johnson walked in, carrying a leather briefcase and a photograph. Tony looked up, terrified. Who the hell are you? Bumpy didn't answer. He walked slowly across the warehouse, stopped in front of Tony, opened the briefcase, pulled out a photograph, held it up. Ruby Williams, yellow dress, church smile, 18 years old. Do you recognize her? Bumpy asked quietly. Tony stared, face draining of color. No, She wanted to be a teacher, Bumpy said calmly. She was top 10 in her class, full scholarship. You took her off the street, chained her here, did things to her no human being deserves, then you dumped her like garbage. Tony started crying. Please, I didn't know. Bumpy leaned down. You knew exactly what you were doing. What happened next didn't take long, and when it was over, Tony Russo's body was found floating near the 125th Street Bridge, pinned to his chest. Ruby Williams, 18 years old. She wanted to be a teacher. You murdered her. June 3rd. This is justice. Harlem remembers. Police ruled it gang violence, didn't investigate, didn't ask questions, didn't connect it to Ruby.